Hey, it's Drybear. Diablo 4 is coming to a close in the early start portion and hasn't even gone live yet. However, we already have a list of patch notes for the game. Some classes got nerfed, some classes got buffed, some builds got specifically targeted, and some Paragon got changed as well. Now, a few of these I could guarantee you were going to happen anyway, so they weren't a surprise, but there are some surprises in here. So let's jump into it. But first, you should come hang out with me on my live stream. We're pushing hard all the way to the end game and getting everything done. And my goal is to get guides out for all of the classes and all of the builds as we progress through the game. If you don't come hang out with me on my live stream, twitch.tv/Drybear, the next time you're walking out in public, you're gonna get a hiccup and think it's a hiccup, but when you hiccup, it's gonna make the weirdest, loudest, most awkward sound anyone's ever heard. All right, let's jump into it. These are live as of 30 minutes ago. They just went out. They said they were gonna make these changes here, and like I said, there's a couple in here that I would have been willing to bet money were going to change because I knew they were a little bit out of line from what we saw in the early testing and the secret testing as well. So keep in mind that they're trying to be confident about this, but they're also trying to let you know that it's a journey for them. So they want to keep balancing, they want to keep looking at it. So let's get into it. Some classes are going to be happy, some aren't. This is going out for all platforms, console and PC, and it is out already. They want to make sure that they're targeting builds that are way too strong and are taking away from the experience. There are some builds right now that are way too tanky and survivable, and they're making the hardcore race a little awkward. There are some builds that are just a little too weak and really aren't able to even clear the campaign and might turn some people off. And they're also making some adjustments for Paragon that are making some of the end game push a little bit easier for some classes in general. So let's start with it. Barbarian, skill changes, challenging shout. This is the one that taunts everyone, gives you fat damage reduction, gives you max HP, and gives you fury back if you modify it. They're going to make this so that when you put more points into it, the effectiveness of that DR is cut in half. So I guess it won't go up to 56 anymore. It'll go up to what, 48% max DR. This one was making Barbarians incredibly strong. They were also one of the few classes they were pushing all the way to the highest because they could actually survive. Sorks with their cheat death on Flame Shield, and then Barbs with their incredible shouts were really kind of pushing the envelope there. So that's going to come down a bit. Legendary aspect change. Bold Chieftains was required on Barbarians, and actually because of this, Barbarians were running this plus other legendaries. Barbarians were running 3 shouts just to get the max bonuses. Bold Chieftains is going to be nerfed from reducing your cooldown per nearby enemy from 5.4 to 1.9 at max. The max cooldown reduction is from 12 to 6, so that one also got cut in half. Aspect of the Dara Wind, this gives crit strike chance per second reduced from 10% to 8%, so 2% across the board for the range there, and the max crit strike bonus reduced from 40% to 24%. I think the reason they did this is because it allowed Barbarians to run. So what was happening stat-wise is they were running like damage reduction while fortified, cooldown reduction, resource generation, and resource cost reduction, because they didn't have to put in as many points or as many enchanted rolls into crit chance because they were getting this. So I think they wanted to bring it down slightly, so you have to maybe on one of your rings or your amulet have to roll a little bit more crit to get the same efficacy without being able to get as much defense for a little bit more of a cost for you. Item changes. This one was going to happen. Gore's Devastating Grips was out of control. This isn't a unique. It's a glove that when you have it on you, when you end Whirlwind explodes and does insane damage and blows up the room. This single item was providing so much damage for Barbarians that it was going to get nerfed regardless. So the explosion damage gained from Whirlwind reduced from 70% to 26%. So cut down to a third of what it was. Damage against wreckable objects no longer increases explosion damage. This made this very map dependent. On some maps, if there were gates or barrels or barricades, you could get damage scaling out of it, which is kind of ridiculous. And then explosion damage is only increased by the first 100 hits of Whirlwind. So when you have insane attack speed and you are outscaling this with a very, very fast Whirlwind, it does have a cap of the amount of damage you deal for the first 100 hits of Whirlwind. But this one shouldn't come as a surprise. This one was very much out of line. This one outscaled every other unique in the game, and it needed to be changed. Going into Druid. Skill changes, Pulverize. The lucky hit chance of Pulverize has been reduced. This means that the damage on it is still the same, but its chance to proc is going to be lower. If you don't know what lucky hit chance is, I have 2 videos on it going over this idea, but this just means that its chance to roll for a proc is lower. The proc chance, the proc percentage is the same. The overall proc percent will go down when using Pulverize. Lightning Storm, which almost no one used, comes with a very major downside that you have to stand still and channel. The damage on this has increased from 32% to 40%. Nice buff there. Grizzly Rage damage bonus from 15% to 18%. So 1, 2, and 3 across the board. Nice little buff there. Grizzly Rage was just being used for the defense reduction, mostly while leveling and pushing, but I think it did deserve to have more damage. Keep in mind, there's a legendary that allows you to almost double the duration of Grizzly Rage. You can get some pretty nice damage for bear form in general, and damage scaling also does help with the overpower build to make those big hits even bigger. Class specialization, Obsidian Slam, kills required for bonus increased from 10 to 20. This one was getting, I wouldn't use the word abused, but it was getting utilized effectively to help speed leveling. So you have to kill more before you get Obsidian Slam. Calm Before the Storm, lucky hit chance reduced from 15% to 10%. This one was also being used to speed level druids. So this lucky hit chance going down and Pulverize going down means that the proc chance overall for the speed leveling build is going to go down. But I think that Calm Before the Storm and Pulverize probably won't, if you're an average player, you probably won't even notice that even existed in the first place. Passive changes, Electric Shock, damage bonus increased from 15% to 18%. This is pretty nice. That should be a free one. And then for legendaries, Shockwave Aspect, damage reduced from 130 down to 100%. This was making it so you could pulverize once and clear a room. I actually thought this was their best leveling build, especially if you're running the Earth version of Pulverize. I feel like they're targeting this damage to limit the Druid speed leveling build that's going on right now. My concern with this, though, is reducing the damage on the Shockwave makes it a little bit harder for this build to level. And I think that unless you're an optimized speed leveler, I feel like if the super in the know people know how good Druid is at leveling, but I think for your average person that's just jumping on Druid and playing it for fun is probably going to have a pretty bad experience leveling. So that's why I worry about these changes that they're making, specifically the Shockwave. I think this gets used for leveling a lot. I hope this doesn't make people have a very bad experience with Druid, but we'll see, I guess. Crashstone Aspect, critical strike damage reduced from 50% to 40%. This one is fine. I think you can get crit damage through other means, and I think this won't affect the actual build and does help limit the bonus that you would get while leveling. Lightning Dancer's Aspect, flat damage increased from 0.6 to 0.8. So they're making some of the Lightning builds a little bit more viable. You can run like Storm Strike into Lightning Storm, and then you can go into the key passive for Lightning and do a lot better now. Especially with the changes to Lightning Storm going up, I think that's going to be pretty nice. So that is Druid. Necromancer got some pretty awesome changes. Bloodlance, which was laughed at by most of the community for being one of the weakest abilities in the game, got a pretty substantial buff here. Damage increased from 67.5% to 80%, plus all the scaling that goes along with that and the bonuses there. The problem with Bloodlance primarily is its build design from the legendaries that exist in the game are around amount of targets lanced. If you look at most of their major legendary powers for a Bloodlance build, it's based on the number of targets lanced, which means against bosses, the single target goes down to doo-doo. And it's actually very hard to run Bloodlance right now, but this damage boost should help quite a bit. There's also been a lot of complaints about minion builds. I think if you're not playing World Tier 1 and doing, equal level content and below, you know how rough it is for minion mains out there. They're very squishy. They take a while to summon. They don't have the hustle that they need to get to the target. So they're making some pretty blanket changes here to make the minions better that I think will help a lot. And then we'll see kind of where they land. I don't think the changes here are going to be enough to make the minions caught up with the rest of the Necro build, specifically Bone. But I think it's a good start. Army of the Dead, damage increased from 30 to 45%. And cooldown reduced from 90 to 70 seconds. I was actually messing around with an Army of the Dead build where if you run two-handed on the Army of the Dead on the two-hand, you can get some pretty significant damage reduction, 180% for your minions, which is pretty cool. But this is a pretty good start. Blood Wave damage increase from 90% to 120%. Very nice. This one is based on Overpower anyways, so giving some base damage to it is just going to feel better. Shadow Blight damage increase to 22%, up from 20%. This also needed help. Shadow it does okay endgame. It still gets beats by bone, but the shadow damage while leveling is pretty weak. So I think getting more Shadow Blight out there is actually a pretty good place to start for Shadow. Grim Harvest, essence gain reduced from 369 to 246. This is when you consume corpses, you get up to 9 essence per corpse. I hate this change. I think this change is bad. I think they're doing this to target bone necromancers, being able to get insane amounts of essence from consuming corpses and detonating corpses. But I feel like this hurts a lot of builds that desperately need that essence gain. I would have liked to see them go a different way here, but this is what we get. So 1, 2, 3 less essence per corpse reduced on Grim Harvest. That one's going to hurt for all Necromancer builds, not just the strongest bone builds that are out there right now. Serration, which is the bone crit, reduced from 1.5 to 0.9. This doesn't really matter that much. You get so much crit for bone builds across the board that you don't really need Serration. This actually might even allow you to take points out of Serration. You have to have 1 because you need to get through the tree, but it might mean you can put these points elsewhere, which could be cool. But I don't think this is insanely necessary for the build. Like, this is fine to change. Death's Defense, max min life lost in a single damage instance, super buffed. So this used to be 75, 60, 45% would be the max amount of max HP hit that a minion can take, which means that with 3 points in it, the minion cannot be 2-shot or 1-shot. They're reducing this even more. So it's 60, 45, 30%. So that means that in a single hit, a minion cannot take more than 30% of its max HP. This is a huge buff for minion defense, and this one I love. This is awesome. Class spec, raised skeleton, skeletal warrior damage increased by 10%, golem damage increased by 10%, blood golem, blood drain damage, the AoE, damage up 90%, blood golem life drain healing from enemies hit increased from 4% to 5%, makes the golem tankier, and I do think that the golem active is pretty weak in general, so I like to see them making this adjustment here. So it's going to get better for blood golems. Bone golems kind of get left behind, but that's okay. And then for the Iron Golem, which has the big AoE slam / stun, the slam damage is going from 25% to 175%. This is massive. This already did like noticeable damage, not great damage, but noticeable. But this is a huge buff for Iron Golem. I'm going to make that pet build a little bit better. And then the shockwave damage that comes out from that, up 10% as well. Super cool. Then for Paragon board, Hulking Monstrosity, which is the Golem board. The legendary node for that, the Golem life and damage bonus increased from 30 to 40%. This is awesome. More damage for Golem and more life is great as well. Combine that with Death's Defense going up, makes it a lot more viable. Cult Leader, which is your minion board, damage bonus increased from 10% to 15%. Also very, very cool. More Paragon investments make those better. Rogue, which is, I would say probably Rogue, Druid, and Barbarian are like competing for the top right now for most OP, if you want to call it. So Rogue changes here. Advanced Twisting Blades, cooldown reduction per hit enemy reduced from 0.25 to 0.1. I think Twisting Blades needed to be changed because the problem was, and I've made so many Rogue builds, I've been doing so much theory crafting, every build before this patch could include Twisting Blades. That's how good it is. I don't think there should be any ability in any kit that can include this, like one ability and run it and be just fine because it's just that good. So the cooldown reduction from Twisting Blades went down quite significantly, 0.25 to 0.1 per enemy hit. That means that builds that like every build that uses abilities like traps or like backstabs and stuff like that won't just be able to run Twisting Blades for free damage and cooldown reduction. Without hurting the damage of Twisting Blades, they're just reducing its utility, which I think is, you pick one of them. Advanced Twisting Blades, maximum cooldown reduction reduced from 3 to 2. So it just means that Twisting Blades is still insanely strong, insanely powerful, does crazy damage. You can still do the Twisting Blade Orbit legendary and clear, but it means it's less utility, so you can't just run it in every build and be perfectly fine. Rapid fire damage increased to 30%. We love that. Penetrating shot was doing great, and I actually would love to see barrage get buffed as well, considering barrage is in the same boat that rapid fire is in, but I like seeing damage on rapid fire. Dark Shroud damage reduction per shadow gain from skills reduced from 0.8 to 0.4. No. Oh, this is not. Dark Shroud was required in all competitive rogue builds, but I wouldn't say that it was required because it was too strong. I would say it was required because rogues were too squishy, and it's a very reliable way to get damage reduction. I don't like this change at all. I don't think this is good for rogue. I don't think rogues are even that like busted survivable. I think Dark Shroud is just, it helps them a lot with not dying on every room, but they're still very squishy. They still have to do melee. I don't like this change, but maybe we'll see what happens to this further down the road. There's not even any legendaries that makes Dark Shroud busted. I just flat don't like this change. Dash, enhanced dash critical strike damage bonus from 20% to 15%. This one's going to hurt all builds that run dash, especially the dash reset builds and like trap and AoE builds. It's not the end of the world. This might just mean you have to put more into your gear and roll an extra crit damage to make up for it. Caltrops damage up 10%, 30% to 40%. I like that a lot. I think Caltrops is very high utility, but it should do a little bit more damage. And it's nice to do Caltrops plus concealment for playing vulnerable for long periods of time, things like that. Passive changes, concussive, crit chance reduced from 15% to 12% at max. So 1, 2, and 3 total across the length of it. Pretty crazy. Legendary affix changes, repeating maximum life lost in a single damage distance brought down. Sorcerer or Sorceress. Skill changes. Right now, the most powerful for Sorc is Arc Lash. There's even some lightning orb, like static orb builds that are going really strong. And there's also a firewall that's pretty competitive as well. But Arc Lash has made its way into every build just because of how strong it is. Arc Lash, lucky hit chance reduced from 30% to 40%. Not only does it hit lots of targets, but it also can trigger twice. So it hits and then hits again. So it was proccing quite a lot. You could get tons of bonus procs from this. So I think this is probably the right change to not affect its damage, but instead make it so it's not doing all these procs. Insane procs. If you watch any of like the 90 plus Sorcs right now, it's pretty crazy. Glinting Arc Lash cooldown reduced from 0.25 to 0.15. I think this is fine. That's a nice change. That's cool. Teleport, shimmering teleports damage reductions. This is after you blink, you get damage reduction. They're keeping the value of damage reduction, but making it last 2 seconds less duration. So that way, when you blink, you still have to blink a little bit more intelligently, but you don't get the damage reduction here. And they've already made a change, I think, to Flame Shield to make it a little bit less. But that the damage reduction here was making it so Sorcs were insanely survivable. I feel like, you know, they probably should be, but maybe we'll see. Legendary FX changes, aspect of control, bonus damage reduced from 30 to 40% to 25 to 35%. So this one is a little bit of a bonus damage reduction. Aspect of control, we were seeing people in groups run 2 Sorcs with aspect of control, and then you could get like crazy CC triggers, especially a boss stagger, and the damage they would drop, especially with Arc Lash proccing lightning orbs all over the place, was bonkers. So the damage reduction is going down to reduce the, I guess, the abuse of groups using this with 2 or 3 Sorcs and just burning things down. Miscellaneous class changes. Druid companions and Necromancer minions. Maximum damage over time taken per damage instance reduced from 2% to 1% of max life. So the maximum damage taken over time per damage instant reduced, which means that dot damage and like AoE effect damage on minions is reduced by 50%. That's huge. I think that is awesome. That is an excellent change. There's a lot of times where you can't control where your minions go. They just run off into nowhere. Sometimes they are in the wrong spot and they die because they're standing in a puddle or they're dotted up. I think this is a great change that makes it feel a lot better. The next change I would love to see is make the minions move faster and make them a little bit more smart, right? I think they already have the modifiers in game for when you go up in difficulty, the enemy AI gets smarter and more aggressive. Add that to the minions, make them a little bit, give them a little more hustle. Lastly, for Paragon board, they're making this a little bit less scalable. Rare nodes, player attack speed nodes reduced by 50%. There was a lot of free attack speed coming out. Attack speed is technically one of its own damage buckets, so the ability to do that was a little bit too much. Glyphs, all glyph bonus scaling has been reduced by 34%, except crit strike damage bonus, vulnerable damage bonus, or has all scaling has been reduced except for the following has been increased by more than 34%. So exploit is being super focused. Crit damage bonus reduced by 66%, vulnerable by 66%, bonus to rare nodes by 50%, bonus to magic nodes by 40%, bonus to cold, lightning, all damage types reduced by 62.5%. So Exploit just took a nerf bat to the face. It was the best glyph in the game. It's the one you level first because it's so good, and vulnerable is the best damage scaler in the game. So I can definitely see this, but it's a lot. There's a lot going on here. Monster changes significantly reduced the spawn rate of treasure goblins within PvP zones. Okay, that one we'll have to see how that goes. Fix the name for the light bearer mount. The go-to shop button from the wardrobe will now properly open the shop. Fix an issue where if sorcerer uses deep freeze and is affected by another effect that would freeze them, it causes them to be permanently stunned. I was seeing a little bit of this, so that's a nice fix. Miscellaneous stability and crash fixes. I hope they fix the can't use abilities soft lock that's going on right now, where you sometimes can get soft lock, can't use abilities, can't mount, can't teleport, and you have to log out. Any bug that makes you have to log out when queues are an unknown is definitely tough. But those are the balance changes for today. Let me know what you think down below. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, or you want to chat about this, come by my live stream. We're going to be streaming all the time. We have drops starting tomorrow for the game, so come pick those up, and yeah, see ya. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.